welcome back to part 4 of our Unity UI tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at scriptable objects and incorporating everything we've learned so far into building out a simple interface. So we'll start with scriptable objects. A scriptable object is a special asset type in Unity that lives at the project level. We can write a class that extends Unity's scriptable object class, and then through the Assets Create menu, we'll get access to create new instances of our custom scriptable object. Now, these instances exist independently of any scene, which means they can be referenced from our scenes for use at runtime. And they're commonly used for storing data. They're also really useful for defining functionality that maybe needs to get reused across scenes. And today, we're mostly going to use them as a data container. So I have my empty Unity project up. I've got my sample scene open, just the basic objects in it. And I've already created an art, scriptable objects, and scripts folder inside of my assets folder. So to get access to create new scriptable object instances, we need to write our first class that extends scriptable object. So I'm going to jump over to my code editor, and I'm going to, in my scripts directory, create a new file called my scriptableobject.cs, and in here we're going to say public class my scriptable object extends scriptable object, and you can see I'm getting some autocomplete here, and the scriptable object class there that we're going to extend, that is part of the Unity engine package. So when I do this, it's going to bring in the Unity engine package with the using keyword. Close our class out with 2 brackets, and we'll come back over to Unity and allow it to recompile. So now that we've got the class in there, we're still not going to see anything in our Assets Create menu just yet. There's one more step, which is to add the Create Asset Menu attribute. So it's open brackets, Create Asset Menu. And with this, just by doing that, we're going to see this now show up in our Assets menu. So when you can do this through here, or you can right click in your project view. So a lot of times it's nice and easier to find the folder, find your scriptable objects folder, and then you right click, go to the create menu, and here now you'll see down at the bottom, here is my scriptable object. Now this is a little bit of a bug in the newer versions of Unity. This used to, and probably should, show up above the folder option. It should show up all the way at the top of this menu. So we have a couple of different properties that we can, or additional options that we can specify on the Create Asset Menu attribute. If I open parentheses, we're going to get a little code hinting here that shows us we can define a file name as a string, a menu name as a string, and an order as an integer. I'm going to start out by defining an order so that we can fix this little bug so that our scriptable objects show up at the top of the create menu. So if I say order equals, and I'm going to start out just by saying -1000. This will just get whatever this bug is that I've noticed recently. This will fix that, and now when we go to create, we're going to see our new item at the top of the list for much easier access. Once we've done that, we can actually remove the order attribute, and it'll stay there at this point. We don't need to worry about it anymore. And at this point, what we'll actually do now is we're going to work with the file name and the menu name attributes. So the file name, this allows us to define as, I think it shows even, yes, the default file name used by newly created instances of this type. So when we create a new instance of our scriptable object in our project hierarchy, it will show up with whatever this default name is. So we can call this, new underscore my scriptable object, or whatever you'd like that default name to be. And we can also define, sorry, I need to put file name equals, there we go. And then we can also define the menu name. So this gives us finer control over where it shows up, for organization in that create asset menu. So we're able to define multiple levels for directories and things like that. So what we can do is we could say, let's see, we'll call this custom scriptable objects, or even just scriptable objects, and then a / and then the name of this particular object, which will use the class name myScriptableObject. Oh, and again, I need to define that this is the menu name attribute. So we've got our file name and our menu name, these properties. We've got these defined, these arguments. And when we come back over here, when we look at our assets create menu, we'll see, oh, it's dropped all the way back down to the bottom. Look at that. See, now jump back down here. All right, let me go ahead and just fix that real quick. I'm going to throw in the order equals -1000, and that should fix it once more. So back over here, recompiling, assets, create. And so here is that scriptable objects that we defined here as the, the first part of our menu name string, followed by the name of the object, which was the second part of our menu name string. So in order to put this in the scriptable objects folder, I'm going to click down here in the project view, create scriptable objects, myScriptableObject. And you can see here it shows up with the default file name new_myScriptableObject that we defined in the within the parentheses there of the create menu, create asset menu attribute. So now we have this instance. Here it is. There's nothing on it. We can't do anything with it yet because it doesn't have any functionality, no properties or anything like that. So if we start to define some properties on it, such as a, let's see, we'll give this a public int, my int, and we can give this a public string, my string, and we will see these show up here on the instance, and they can be edited through the inspector here. So now we're able to define these values stored on this scriptable object, and anything that we put in here will get saved as these attributes on this instance of our scriptable object. So that's how we can bring these, start to create these different classes that extend scriptable objects and bring them into our project and start to define data and things like that on them. By default, when you start to have multiple scriptable objects in your project, these will show up in an alphabetic order by whatever the menu name that you've defined is, and then again you can use the order attribute to customize that order. Otherwise, it will just be alphabetic. Okay, so now that we have gone through scriptable objects, creating a class and creating an instance, we're going to start to use these in a sample project where we're going to build out a simple storefront. So for that, I started out by kind of mocking up what a basic storefront might look like. This is just Adobe Illustrator. And just a little wireframe so that we could kind of start to get a handle on what classes we're going to need, what game objects we're going to need, and all of that. So you can see what I've got here. I've got one area of my UI that is going to hold all of the different items that are available in the store. Then for each item, we have an image, an item name, a price, and a quantity with plus and minus buttons to increase and decrease the quantity. Secondly, we have another area of our UI that's going to be dedicated to the cart. The cart has a header, and then for each item that we add, we're going to get a small, a compacted version, a compacted little, game object or piece of the UI that shows what the item's name was, what the current quantity is, what the current price of the total quantity is for all of the items we add to our cart. And we've got a total underneath that's being calculated and a checkout button. So this, this tells me a few things. So one thing I know is that all of these items, we want to be able to reuse this component so that as we add new items, we don't need to create them manually. So I'm going to actually get rid of all of these, And what we know is that this one is going to be a game object that we want to reuse in our UI, which means it's probably going to be a prefab. Secondly, we have over here in our cart a similar kind of a thing. Each of these is a very similar piece of the UI, which means what we really probably want is another prefab that we will clone and create new instances of as we need. And so we can see from here, we're going to have, an area that's used for item layout. We're going to have an item view. We're going to have a cart kind of cart layout or cart view. We're going to have a cart item view. And that's pretty much most of the classes. And then the last piece is, in order to get the data in for what our different items are in our store, that's where we're going to use scriptable objects. So we're going to have a scriptable object that represents an item that holds an image, reference to an image, an item name, a price, and then the quantity is something that will be not predefined necessarily on the object, but that will be, that value will get modified when the user is interacting with our UI. So from here, I kind of made a requirements list based off of, what I thought this UI would need. And so we've got our item concept, and we have the data for that item, which is the name, the description, the image, and the price. This is all going to go into a scriptable object. We have the display for that item. So that's going to be that prefab with a class on it that translates, it takes the data from the scriptable object and populates that into the item's view. Again, this is the item view, which is showing us the data about the item. And then there's the user selection. So this is, the buttons, the plus and minus buttons, so that a user can say, I want to add this item to my cart or remove this item from my cart. So we also have the idea of a store. This is kind of represented by this, this gray box here, multiple items. What is the items? What are the items that we have available in the store that we want to show to the user, and how are we going to display them? And then lastly, we have the cart. And so again, we've got sort of the cart data, which is what is the current set of items. And then we have the display for the cart showing each item that's in it, along with our, our total and, some checkout button so the user can then advance to the next state of the UI. So this translates to a few different scripts. Again, our store MonoBehaviour. This is going to act as the entry point for the application. It's going to hold the list of available items, and it is responsible for general application setup. We have the item scriptable object. This is going to hold the item data. We have the ItemView. That's a MonoBehaviour. That's going to go on that gameObject prefab that displays the item in the UI. You can see it's placed on the ItemView gameObject prefab, and it populates the view from the item's data and listens for clicks. Then we have our cart MonoBehaviour. This is placed on our CartView gameObject. It's going to listen to requests to change the cart contents. And lastly, this should be a 5, not a 3. We've got our cart item MonoBehaviour. So this is placed on the specific CartItemView, and this populates that specific cart item from the item data. So here we have our prefabs. We have the ItemView prefab, and this actually we have another one which I forgot to add here. This is our CartItemView prefab, and I guess this actually should be CartItemView as well. And this, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and just remove this line. I copied and pasted this. I didn't update what it is. So this one is going to be, has appropriate components for displaying. Yeah, actually, it's pretty much the same thing. Displaying cart item data. The big thing here is that it doesn't have the image, right? And it also doesn't have the plus and minus buttons to affect them. Okay, so the process for how we're going to go from, when the user boots up the application, what needs to happen to take us from nothing to our fully fleshed out UI. So we're going to iterate over the store's item list. For each item, we're going to clone the item display prefab. We're going to populate that clone from the data of the current item. When the user clicks, we're going to listen to those clicks. We're going to report that to the so we're gonna do that through then an action or an event. We're going to have the cart listening for that and updating its contents through the update relative quantity listener. It's going to invoke the menu items static event func menu item int. And we'll go through all of this as we build it out. We'll go through this in more detail. Passing the menu item an amount and expecting to receive the current total quantity back from the cart, or which knows about the total quantity. And let's see, the cart has a menu item relative view quantity update, menu item and int amount listener assigned, validates the request to increase and decrease the quantity, and returns the new quantity. It's going to hold the items and their counts in a dictionary. Okay, so let's start out with the most basic thing, which is the game objects, right? What is this going to look like? We know that we need these elements in our view. Even before we're able to push data into them, we know we're going to need these elements in our view so that we can display them to the user. So we will start out by creating a UI canvas element. Okay, this brings in our event system at the same time. That's okay that this is in a screen space overlay. That works fine. Again, all of this is just going to be sort of in this 2D canvas. And from here, get the, oops, pardon me. Yeah, focus the canvas. There we are. So first thing first, we know that we need two large areas. We've got the store item area and then the cart area. So we can start out by creating a, we'll start with some containers actually. It's probably the easiest thing to do. So this is going to be our store item area. We want this to take up everything from, we can say this is about, I'm going to just reorganize this so I can jump back and forth a little more cleanly. We can see this is about, almost 3/4 of the UI. So I'm going to run this from 0 to 0.75, adjust my left and right values. Oh, and I think I have my canvas spun around here. There we go. Looking at it from the back before. So my store item area, I'm going to add a component to this so that we can see it. I'm going to add an image component, and I'm going to bring this in, we're going to give this a little bit of padding. How about, 64 pixels? That's a little big. Let me try 32. Yeah, we're going to go 32 pixels off the left, right, top, and bottom for our store area. And secondly, we're going to need a cart area. And this is going to go from a min of 0.75 to a max of 1. And again, I'm going to move this 32 off of each side. So now we've got our two areas for the store item and the cart item. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to start creating a store item. So this is going to be a store item. And we can say this is we're going to define this one a little more, sort of absolutely. And actually what we may end up doing is kind of using some of Unity's built-in UI components like the layout, horizontal layout group, grid layout group, and vertical layout group to help us auto position and auto size some of these, these elements inside of a container. So the store item, we know that we have a few things. We're going to have obviously a background area. We're going to have our image area, a couple of text fields, and a couple of buttons. So inside of this, I'm going to start with the background and the store item overall. Let's give this a, let's see, I'm having a hard time seeing it. So I'm going to start by just adding an image so I can size this a little easier. And this is, let's see, make this red so we can see it. And we're going to say this is about maybe 200. That seems pretty good. By 300. That seems like an okay place to start. I'm going to go ahead and now that I've seen how big this is, we can go ahead and we'll set this to a darker gray while we work with it. So we've got our background. After the background, we want an image. This one, we're going to position it to the top. So I'm setting this through, through our anchor presets menu. I have moved my Y values both to 1. I'm allowing it to expand across the entire container from 0 to 1. And I've got my pivot point at 1. So this allows me to define, if I do it this way, it allows me to define an absolute height. And that's not too bad. Actually, and think maybe in this case, maybe what I'll actually do instead is I will use a percentage. And I'm going to say the top half from 0 to 1 is going to be our, my store item area, my store item. Oh, it looks like it undid. Oh, the background. Oh, okay. Sorry. I defined the size on the background instead of the store item. So I'm just going to move this 200, 300 from the background to my store item. And the background is going to be allowed to expand to fill the entire store item area. So this is now, the store item is now a container 200 by 300. The background has a stretch horizontally and vertically, so it fills the whole space. The image is going to go from 0 to 1 on the horizontal axis, so filling it horizontally, and from 0.5 to 1 on the vertical axis, so filling the top half of our store item. We, of course, need an image for this. And again, just for the visuals, I'll make this area, I think I made it black in my, yeah, I made it black here, so I'll make it black here. And you can see I've got a little bit of padding around the edges, right? So I'm going to go ahead and give this a little bit of padding here. We'll say maybe 16 pixels off of each. And so now I have my store item, the item image. And let's see, next thing we need is a couple of text fields. We need item name and price. So we're going to add a TextMesh Pro UI. I'm going to import my TextMesh Pro packages. And now I've got this. And so let's see, this actually, interesting question. We know that the image is taking up the top half. So we can either kind of, define, I think what we'll do is we're going to say that the bottom, we want the image to take up the top half. And we know that the whole bottom half is going to, hold the rest of what we've got going on here, the name, the price, and the quantity. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new container that is going to take up just the bottom half, and on the x-axis going from 0 to 1 again. So it's going to take up just the bottom half of our store item area. So this is, we're going to call this, we can call this, we can really call this, and it's just a container. We'll call this, item info container. Okay. And actually, I'm going to remove this TextMesh Pro component, and I'm going to put it on a child instead. So I've now got my item info container, which takes up the bottom half. I'm creating a new game object for my item name. So we'll call this item name. This one is going to expand horizontally across the whole thing. And for now, I'll just have it fill. But what we're going to do is we're going to use the vertical layout group to help us automatically position these items inside. Let's see, we need our TextMesh Pro component. This is going to be our item name. we're going to center it, and we're going to keep it aligned to the top for now. We are also going to add the item price, I believe. Yep, the item price. And this is going to be some dollar amount. So now that we've got these two children in here, you can see that we've allowed both of them to stretch to the size of the container, which is why they're currently overlapping. So now what we'll do is we're going to add a vertical layout group component. This allows us to automatically position the children of whatever game object we put the vertical layout group on. So it is on our item info container. We've got two children in here. I'm going to say that align these children to the upper center. I'm going to tell this to control the child's width. So that says expand the children out to fill the container to match whatever the width of the parent is. And you can see it's already, because it's a vertical layout group, it chooses to stack these things one on top of the other. And you can see here, the positioning here is grayed out because these values are being driven by the vertical layout group. Okay, so that's those two. And lastly, we're going to need our buttons and our quantity. And so now what we have here, actually, these three items are in a row horizontally. And so what I might want to do here is actually use another container with a horizontal layout group. So this is going to be our quantity container. And let's see, we control force child expand. Oh, controls child height. The quantity container, because it's empty, it's not really given a lot of height yet. We're going to, in here, we're going to have our minus button. We're going to have a plus button, and we're going to have our quantity text field. So the quantity text field, we're going to add that Text Mesh Pro UI. This is our quantity. We're going to take that, we're going to center align it. And on our quantity container, I'm going to add that horizontal layout group. I'm going to control the child's width, control the child's height, and I think that should be pretty good. So you can see, based on the order that we have these things in our hierarchy, we'll control where it places, how it positions them horizontally. So if the higher it is up in the hierarchy, the first, that's the first item in our horizontal layout group. So it positions it all the way to the left. You can, of course, here you have a reverse arrangement option. If we flip this, it will position them from right to left instead of from left to right, but we don't need that for now. What we do need is to move our quantity to the middle so that we have our minus button on the left, quantity in the middle, and our plus button on the right. For our buttons, this is going to be something that, these could be prefabs, right? We're not necessarily going to reuse this particular button a lot. We're going to reuse it twice, basically, one for the minus and one for the plus. But that's about it. So I don't know that I'll really worry about turning this into a prefab just yet. We'll see. Maybe I will. Maybe I will do that anyway. Either way, we're going to start out by adding this button component. And I like to have a hit area specifically for the buttons. And I like to have, not as a child of the minus button. I like to have my background for the button, and maybe I will have my icon for the button. For the icon, rather than using an image, I'm just going to use a text field so that I don't have to go create plus and minus images. So the icon, this is for my minus button. We're going to say it's a minus. We're going to center that horizontally and vertically inside of the view. And let's see, the icon should expand to fill the size of the button. The background, that needs an image. That's the wrong one. Image, there we go. Okay, so this was a white background on the button. And again, the button background should also fill the minus button container. And the hit area also will have it fill the whole area. Let's see, and we'll change the color on the text field to be black so that it shows up. This is still white. And let's see, our minus button, we want to give a little bit of padding. And we'll do this on the, we can do this on the container itself, right? So on this bottom row where we're putting the 2 buttons and the quantity, we'll give this a little bit of spacing. We're going to say, you know, we'll move what, like 16 pixels off again, off the left and off the right, and off the bottom, maybe 16 as well. And you can see it's, you know, as we change the size of this quantity container, the other items in our vertical layout group are being adjusted appropriately based off of the amount of space that we're leaving for it. Let's see. Yeah, actually, you know what? Quantity container, rather than doing this on the bottom here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the item info container. That's actually probably a better place to do this. We don't want any of these things, really. We don't want the name or the buttons. We want none of this touching the edges of our item, of the overall like kind of item view. So I'm going to remove it from here, and I'm going to add it instead to the item info container. I'm going to say left 16, right 16, and bottom 16. So let's see, we've got a couple things going on here. Our item name, it got a little bit too skinny, so the item name has changed the ragging. It's made a new line, it's pushed it down. We're going to change the wrapping mode to no wrap. So this is now a single line text field. We're going to do that to the price as well. There's no reason to have those things wrapping at all. And I can even do it to the quantity. None of these should ever really wrap. The minus button, you know, it's already never going to wrap. It's only a single character. And let's see, at this point, I'm going to actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy and paste my minus button, call this the plus button, and I'm going to update that text field to be our plus sign. So that's looking pretty good. We can give ourselves a little bit of padding between the items, or spacing rather. So on the vertical layout group, maybe we want to give ourselves a little bit of spacing between these items. Right now it's pushing all of that down, changing only the size of the quantity container. That's because these guys, we can choose to auto size them, but I don't really like that either. I think maybe we'll just bump this down a little bit. And our item info container off the top, we want to give a little padding between the image and the item info. So we'll throw a 16 pixel padding on the top as well. Okay, this is looking pretty good. I think that looks like a pretty solid start for our item view. And at this point, I think that we probably are pretty good to move on to the next. So actually, this item info, or sorry, the store item, this store item as a whole is definitely something that we want to reuse across multiple items, right? We're going to change what the image is. We're going to update the name and the price, but everything else about this is very reusable. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a prefab. I need to create a new folder for my prefabs. I'm going to drag the store item into my prefab folder. Here I go. Turns blue, lets me know it's a prefab. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy and paste it. And now we're going to look at the store item area. This is where we're going to display all of the items. And what we had before, right, was this sort of a grid-based kind of a thing. So as you might imagine, there is a grid layout group. This controls the actual cell sizing of each item inside. So this is now overriding that 200 by 300 that I had before. I can update that here and say that the cell size should be 200 by 300. We can give ourselves a little bit of spacing in between, and I think that looks good. Start corner, upper left, start axis horizontal, child alignment, upper left, constraint flexible. You can, set specific column and row counts. You can see if if I set the column count and I say 1, it will drop it down because we're only having a single column. Obviously, I don't really need to do that here. We can have this be flexible. Okay, and as we add new items, we can preview what's going to happen. So you can see it's great when I added that one with the spacing it appropriately, but when I added more and they came down to the next line, we're missing some vertical padding. So here, our spacing as well, we're going to say 16 pixels. And so now we're kind of starting to see what we want here. Let's see, and if I, upper left, yeah, that's everything we want. Start axis horizontal, child alignment, I think, yeah, okay, upper center, that moves everything to the middle. And oh, padding, of course, at the top. We also want some padding to bring these things off of the edges. We could say that off of the top, take 16 pixels, and off of the bottom. In this case, our store items are sort of expanding. If we go to our game view, you can see they're going off the bottom of the screen, and they're going outside of our container. So what we may want to do is add a scroll view component, which will allow us to place these items into a masked area, which the user can then scroll and see all of the items. We'll jump to that one later. So this is starting to look pretty good. I think the next thing that we'll do is we're not going to jump to the cart just yet. We will go to getting our items populated with data from scriptable objects. So now we're going to jump back over to our code view. I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I'm going to close out the My Scriptable Object, or actually, you know what? Maybe we'll just repurpose it. So we're going to rename this. Oh, I will get rid of that instance that I made. When you'd make updates to scriptable objects, sometimes the old instances, they kind of hang on to whatever they especially if you're making big changes, like you're going to change the class name of your scriptable object. Instances of the previous class, they don't always update the way that you would expect or want them to. That change of class name doesn't really carry over in the same way. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that instance for now. So we'll come back over here. We're going to change a bunch of stuff here. This is no longer my scriptable object. That's far too generic. This is going to be store item data. It is still going to extend scriptable object. The things that we know we're going to have for this store item are a name. We'll call this item name just to be even more descriptive. We're going to have a price, which is going to be a float, not an int. And this is going to be item price. That way, using the float, we're able to define decimal values instead of just an integer value. And let's see, we need to define an image, and I think that's it. So we're going to also define and actually the image is an image component, right? And so our image component actually, if we can jump into, oh yeah, here we go, the cart. So the image component, you can see here, source image, it takes a sprite as the value of what it's going to show. So actually, this needs to be a sprite reference. And this is going to be the item sprite. Okay, so we need to also update the file name on this. This is my scriptable object. This is now store item data. The file name is going to be new store item. And personally, I like to use an underscore at the beginning of these new instances because the underscore character usually it sorts these things alphabetically always within inside the project view. So the underscore character means it's always going to jump right to the top. So it can be, if you have spare instances, maybe you create an extra instance and forget about it, it's easy to find it later on. It's not so hidden in the middle of a bunch of different items and instances. And so this one, we can go ahead and leave scriptable objects as our menu name. We don't even need to create, this doesn't need to be in a submenu. We could just leave this at the top level of that, of our create asset menu. And this is again going to be a new store item data. We'll put that there and there. And that should be pretty good. So now if we jump back over here, we should get a recompile, and then we should, in our scriptable objects, we're going to go ahead, I'm going to create a new folder and say I'm going to put all of my store items into this subfolder of scriptable objects, and from here create store item data. Here is my new instance, and we're going to have a couple different names. So for me, let's see, we had shirts. So I've got a shirt, and we're going to price a shirt at $5. Why not? And I don't have a shirt sprite yet. We'll bring one in a little later, or maybe just use like a color placeholder, in the meantime. But for now, we'll worry about the sprites a little bit later on. So I can copy and paste to create a new instance. So we've got, I'm also going to rename this so I can see what I'm doing. So this is a shirt. We've also got pants. Item name, pants, item price, we'll make a pants, we'll make those $10. And lastly, we've got socks. And we're going to update the item name here, socks, and that item price, we'll say that is, maybe we'll say that they're $2.50, so we can kind of show that use of the float value and making sure that we are in fact tabulating the full amount and not just the full dollar amounts. Okay, so we've got $2.50 for socks, sure. Okay, so now that we've got our data instances, what we need is to make sure that we can take that data and populate it into our item view. So our store item, again, these are prefabs. I'm going to move inside of the prefab so that now any changes I make are affecting every prefab, rather than if I do this from the outside, it would only add it to that specific prefab. Okay, so I'm going to add a new component, and this is going to be our store item view. This is a new script, create and add. And I think we're going to need to do a little reorganization. I'm pretty sure that's just that script. When you do this, when you add it like that way, you can see it adds it to the straight into the assets folder. It doesn't organize it under the scripts folder. So I'm going to bring this into my scripts folder, store item view, getting a recompile. So now we have our store item with a store item view, and we'll have our empty store item, or almost empty store item class here. So you can see we've got the store item view. It extends a MonoBehaviour because it's a component that we're putting on a gameobject. And we got auto, because we created this script through Unity's, the create component menu, it comes pre-populated with start and update functions. We don't need an update function. We're going to use the start function. The start function, as it says, is called once before the first execution of the of update. Basically, as soon as this thing, it's kind of like awake, except it happens after awake. Awake is the another built-in Unity method that runs immediately when the item wakes up. So sometimes that can be useful depending on, exactly when you need something to happen, whether it's happening like in the very first frame, or if it's okay, if there's some initialization logic that's maybe happening elsewhere. You can use the awake for the initialization logic, and then you can use the start. You can safely use the start function, knowing that everything in any awake function in your entire project will have already been run before anyone's start method is run. So what we need to do with our store item view is we need to update the different components that we have. We have an image component, and item, the name, the couple of text field components for the name, the price, and the quantity. And we also have a couple of buttons that we need to wire up. So let's start. We're going to, let's see, we need to have a references to those components so that we can change their values. So, and actually what we'll do is we're going to use private, we could use public, and they would show up in the inspector automatically, right? So if we do a public text mesh pro UGUI, again, brings in the TM Pro package when I'm using text mesh pro in my script. And this is going to be item name. I'm going to create another one for item price. I'm going to create another one for item quantity. And let's see, we also need a reference to that image component, item image. And I'm going to need to bring in the Unity Engine UI package in order to work with the image components. And I think we're also going to, I don't know that we actually are going to need references to our plus and minus buttons. I think what we'll do is we'll use the on-click, within our button here, we have the, where is it at? Here we are. We have our on-click listeners and the ability to attach this to that script through drag and drop and serialized fields. So we'll use this in order to attach the buttons to the scripts rather than getting a reference here and then, attaching it programmatically through like we have in a previous video. So we'll use the serialized fields for this one. So we've gotten all this, and what we need actually, rather than, because these prefabs are going to be getting instantiated on the fly by our overall store instance, right? Our kind of the store container, the store item container. And so the store item, the overall store item container, whatever you want to, I can't remember what we're calling it yet. That knows about all of the scriptable object instances. And for each scriptable object instance, it will create a new view and then push the data into that view. So what we can do actually is we're going to create a new public void populate item. We know that we're going to take in that store item data. And when we get that store item data, we're going to update the values of the components. So our item image dot sprite is going to be equal to the store item data item sprite. The item image dot item name. Not item image, just item name. Item name dot text is going to be equal to the store item data dot item name. Our item price dot text is going to be equal to the store item data dot item price. And let's see. Can't implicitly convert float to string. Right. So actually, we need to, because this is going to be a currency, we need to attach the $ to the front of whatever value you're getting, and we also need to convert this to a string. So by using the string literal with a $ in front of your quotes, this allows you to insert variables into strings. So by putting the store item data item price inside of a pair of brackets and putting, inside of our $ open quote, close quote, we're able to insert whatever the value of this variable is into our string. And it automatically calls the toString. Floats have a default toString method. Because we've inserted this into this string, the toString method is actually automatically being called. And so what we want to do is we want to put it, actually, it's kind of funny looking, right? Because we have a $ in front of $, but we need to put that $ in front of our item price. And actually, we'll probably need to do a couple other things to make it look like, make it look like an actual item price, a currency. Right now we have our pants are just set at 10. We don't have those 2 extra zeros for the cent value. And for our other one, for our socks, 2.5 is actually $2.50. So we're going to need to do a little bit of padding to make sure that we're formatting our prices appropriately. But we'll take care of that later on. For now, we just want to get this data displaying in the view. And because nothing has happened yet, we know that our item quantity needs to get set to 0. Item quantity dot text equals 0. And again, this is a text field, so we're going to be converting it that way. Okay, let's see here. At this point, we've got our store item, and I think what we need to do in order to be able to call this populate item method from somewhere, we need to now get our store container going. So we're going to create a new class. We'll call this store, and this will extend a MonoBehaviour. All right, and I'm going to save this in my scripts folder, and we'll just call this store.cs. Okay, come back over here, let it compile. Of course, we're going to need to import some namespaces and all of that. Right now, for whatever reason, I'm not getting the autocomplete that I would like, so I'm just going to do it manually using Unity Engine, and that should get us going here. Okay, great. So our store, if we jump back over to our, what we said we were going to do, we need the store MonoBehaviour acts as the entry point for the application, holds the list of available items, and is responsible for application setup. So back over to our store, we need to hold the list of available items. That means that we're going to have a list or an array. In this case, we'll use an array of store item data. This is going to be the store items. And we need to expose this. So we're going to use the serialized field here, and we're going to keep this as a private variable. Serialize field. Okay, so by default, private fields don't show up in the inspector. If you add the serialized field attribute to whichever property it is, it will then show up in the inspector. So we can go ahead and, we can either, we could throw this on, this particular game object, the store item area. We could throw it on the canvas. We also can create a brand new item and just call, brand new game object. We'll call it store. I'll reset the transform, and we can add our store script to it. You can see here, because I've serialized that field, here the store items shows up here, and I can edit it. I can add new values, and I can drag and drop these values into our store item array. I can reorder them as well, and this is a nice thing. We'll be able to reorder them here and control what the order is that they show up in our display. Okay, so now that we've got these items populated, what we need to do in our, we could do this again in awake or start. What we're going to do is we're going to run through each store item, right? And we're going to create an instance of that view and populate it. So actually, the other thing that we need is an instance of the view, right? We need a reference to that prefab so that we can clone it and add it into the store item view. So what we're going to have here is, again, serialize the field so that we can get access to it. This is going to be a game object, and this is going to be our store item prefab. come over here and we'll get access to that reference, add our store item prefab. Okay. And so now we are ready to, on start, for each store item data item in store items. So for each element in our store items array, we're going to, I really wish I would get the autocomplete for this. Let me see if I can just get that really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and just close this out and reopen it. Yes, we'll save this. Let's see if I reopen the store demo and allow it to do that. Okay, good. Now I'm seeing references. Oops. Now I'm seeing references and I should have access. Create. Here we go. Okay. So gameobject.instantiate. This takes a reference to an object for the original object we want to instantiate clones of. The original object is our store item prefab. This takes the transform of the parent that we want to instantiate them into. So in this case, we want to instantiate them into the store item area. And actually, that's a really good reason. We could expose the store item area as a reference and then bring it in here. Or alternatively, we could move the store script onto the store item area so that we could reference the rect transform, or the transform rather, the transform property, which is, again, comes on every component. And by extending MonoBehaviour, we get access to that component. We have access to our transform by default. So if I were to move the store script off of this store game object and put it on the store item area, I would automatically get reference to that rect transform, which is the parent container of the store items. In this case, we've got it as a separate thing. Sometimes it can be nice to kind of keep your view, your UI, right? The things that are responsible for just displaying it. It can be nice to keep that separate from the actual logic that's pushing in all of this data and creating the UI. So in this case, I will do that. I'm going to create a serialized field to a rect transform, and we're going to call this store item container. And we are going to instantiate them into the store item container. So I should get a reference here. Good, I'm going to bring that in. And something else I'm going to do here, now that we've seen that this layout is working okay, I'm going to get rid of all of these extra items. So we just have the one prefab. And what I like to do a lot of the times is, it's nice to be able to still keep this prefab in the view so that I'm able to see, without digging into the prefab here, I'm able to see in the scene what my store item looks like. However, if I want to run through these elements, and actually I think we're pretty close at this point, we can probably just run this and see what happens. We should end up instantiating 3 store item prefabs into our view, and we're going to end up with a 4 total because there was 1 already there. Yeah, there you go. You can see we've got the 3 clones. These are the ones we created programmatically, but the one that we left in the scene from, just as kind of like the reference, it stays there. So what I like to do a lot of the times actually is to leave it there, but then just remove it. And this is another, we're going to use the awake function here. That way I know this will run before my start method. I have a reference to the parent container that's taking all of the clones. And so again, this is, because of the decisions I've made around how I'm structuring this, I know that the first child in my store item area is that store item prefab. So in this case, what we're going to do is the store item container. Actually, you know what? Let's see, the store item prefab. I think there might even be let's see if I reference this. Yeah, okay. So here's another option we can do. rather than referencing the prefab from the actually no, okay, I like that better. We're gonna continue to reference it from the prefabs here. Alternatively, by using this reference, I could turn that prefab off, and actually we'll see the difference of how these things go. So for one, I'm just going to start it from here. I'm going to say that the store item container dot transform get child 0 dot game object set active false. So I am looking at the transform on my store item container. I am getting the child at the 0 index, so the very topmost one. And I am getting the reference to the game object, which was available through the transform. Again, the transform exists on every game object. The game object, every game object has a transform. So you are able to get those two references just through Unity's default functionality. You're able to get those two references from each other, the game object from the transform and the transform from the game object. And the game object, we are saying set active to false, which again dictates, that's the equivalent of this checkbox here, which turns the item on or off in the view. Pardon me. So now that we've done this, when we start up, we should see only the 3 instantiated ones. You can see it leaves it in the hierarchy, but it's inactive, and therefore it gets ignored by our grid layout group, and it doesn't render it in the scene at all. As a quick note, if we were to, on our store, instead of referencing the prefab from the project, if we reference the prefab, the game object that's in the scene, what that would allow is for us to say store item prefab dot game object dot set active false. And so this is a little cleaner, right? Because now it doesn't really matter if there was a change to the hierarchy, we have a reference directly to the item that we are cloning, and we're also going to be able to deactivate it. However, when I do this, because that item was deactivated in the awake function, when we clone it, we get a bunch of deactivated clones. So we're able to do this to kind of free ourselves up from the, the specific hierarchy. But because we're doing this, we then need to remember to say, we need to capture the reference to the newly instantiated object. So we're going to say game object store item. And this is actually the store item view. And as a result, I'll update this to say store item view as well later. If I do that now, it'll break the reference, right? So the store item view is the newly instantiated clone. And actually, you know what? Rather than just saying view, I'm just going to say clone. Store item clone. Store item clone dot set active true. And so now we can instantiate those clones from the deactivated prefab, but they're all going to then get reactivated and display here in our store. So they're still not being populated. We have to call the populate method on our store item view. So to do that, the store item clone, we know that this game object is going to have a store item view component. We can get component store item view, and we can populate the item with the item data from our store item data array. So now when we run this, we're not going to have a sprite. I think that's okay. Even without a sprite, I think it'll just be null, and we won't get any sprites. Oh, nope, maybe that's going to be a problem. Let's see. Store item view 19. So if we go to our store item view, 19 item sprite, item image dot sprite, no reference exception. So let's see, that's because our store item image, oh, let's see. Oh, I didn't set any of these. Ah, of course. I forgot to link these up in the prefab. I added them, but I didn't say, I forgot to tell it where the image component is. So we're going to link these up now. Again, we're inside the prefab, so this is going to happen for everybody. Setting up the item linkage, the linkages to the image, the item name, the item price, and the item quantity. All right, so now hop back out and hopefully, there we go. Look at that. So now we are getting each of these store item views populated with the data from our store item scriptable objects. Okay, so let's see. I think what we'll do next is, probably link up the buttons, and then we're going to need to connect them to our cart. So back into the items, the store item prefab, we need to listen to clicks on the plus and minus buttons, which means we need to expose some methods that those items can call through their on-click listeners. So we're going to have a public void increase quantity, and this could take an integer value. We could say increase relative quantity. We're only really going to be adding by one, right? It doesn't necessarily make sense to have to click a plus button that would then add more than one of the item to the cart. But you could, depending on what it was, like for instance, in some games, there's the buy 1 and buy 10 buttons. Those two buttons could leverage the exact same function by passing in different integer amounts. So we're going to say, say increase relative quantity. I mean, you could even just have something that would actually, let me just say change instead of alter. That's a little clearer. Change relative quantity. So we could pass in negative numbers and still make use of this exact same function. So what we'll do here is we've got our minus button, adding a click listener, linking it to my store item view script, and there should be the change relative quantity with an int, and now I'm able to define how the quantity should change. Well, for the minus button, we're going to subtract 1 from the quantity, and we're going to do the same thing for the plus button. Link this up, store item view, populate, oh no, not populate them, change relative quantity, and 1. Okay. So now we've got that hooked up, and personally, so we could, as a sort of a quick way to test this out, what we can do is store the quantity locally in our store item view. That's not really what we want, from a sort of application architecture perspective. It makes more sense for these items to kind of really, they're just the interface through which the user is interacting, and they should be receiving data about the current quantity from the part of the application that knows about all of the item data, like the currently selected item data, which is going to be our cart, right? And so what we're going to actually do is, when we report a change in the quantity to the cart will report back to that item what the new total quantity is. That way we don't get out of sync, where our store item view is holding a value that it thinks is the quantity, and the cart is holding a value that it thinks is the quantity. Much better if we can share that data across them from a single point of truth. So for the sake of testing this out immediately, what we will do is we will add a private int current quantity, and in our we can set that to 0. We'll initialize that as 0 here. We also could initialize that through the start or the awake methods. Pardon me. And what we'll do is, instead of using the text value here, we will use that that current quantity. And again, it's going to need to be toString. Okay. So when we change the relative quantity by the amount, we're going to say that the current quantity plus equals the amount passed in, and we're going to ask it to update the quantity text. Okay. So now jump back here. We'll jump out to our scene level, our scene view. We can play. And when I click this plus button, we're increasing the quantity. Minus decreases it. Of course, we're not checking at all whether or not this quantity is valid. So I'm currently able to add negative quantities because all we're doing is changing that value locally. Again, this is something where, we don't want each item to have to hold the logic for checking if the quantity is valid. What we want to do is report that to our single source of item quantity data. That's basically that its responsibility is tracking those item quantities. And then when we say remove an item -1 from the current quantity, that location where it's holding the quantity, that cart, is going to say, oh, our quantity is currently 0. The new quantity is still 0. So, but this is all hooked up and working, so that's great. We're getting there. Okay, so at this point, I believe that the next thing that we're going to need to do is to get the cart and the cart item views going on. All right, so we'll start out with the design side of things. And again, I'm just going to reorganize this quick so we can jump back and forth between our Illustrator project or Illustrator and Unity. So we've got the header, for the items, quantities, of price, as well as the cart, and then the prefabs here, and then total and the checkout. So let's jump over here to our cart area, and we'll start out just by creating a new the header text. So this is going to be our cart header. Go ahead and throw the Text Mesh Pro UI on here. Just label this and change this to black. We will center it, keep it aligned to the top, and we will align this to the top of our cart area. And that looks like it should be fine as a start. Up next, we need the item, quantity, and price. And again, this is in a row. We can either do this manually or we can lay this out with a horizontal layout component. So maybe we'll do that. So we'll call this item header. And actually, no, I'm just going to copy and paste the cart header and then call that item header. This one, let's see. I think what I'll do here, because these items in the cart, we don't know how many of these prefabs we're going to have, or how many of these cart items we're going to have as our store grows. And theoretically, the cart could have more items than we have space for. And so this area here might need to become a scroll view, again, similar to our store might need to become a scroll view. But the header should be fixed, and the total and the checkout button should be fixed. So I think, let's see, what we'll do is, I'm just going to start by positioning this off the top, right? So we'll bring this down. That's a little too far. 54, sure. We'll start with that. And you know what? Actually, I am going to use that horizontal layout component again. So this is going to be the item header container. And actually, that first one is going to be the item. So this is item text. and then the quantity, QTY, and the price. Oh, price. Okay, and I'm just going to remove this text. We don't really need that. Okay, this item header container is going to get the horizontal layout group to lay these out across. We're going to say control the width, control the height. All of these items, and for certain things we can select them all at once, and they'll for components we can select multiple components and change these all at once. So I've got all of my three Text Mesh Pro, 3 game objects with the Text Mesh Pro component on them, and I can set the wrapping mode to no wrap on all of them at the same time. Now we need to change the values, right? One of them is item, one of them is quantity, and one of them is price. Pardon me. And this one, we want to, the actual header container, we're going to have it stretch across the whole thing. We're going to bring it down by about 60, let's try 64 pixels. Yeah, it looks okay. And all of these are a little bit too large right now, right? From a text size. We'll bring these down to 24. We also, of course, we could ask it to auto size, and then we could add some padding. This would be another way to do it. 32 is a little bit more than we need, maybe only 16. Yeah, something like that seems okay. And then underneath the item header container, we're going to want a line. So actually, we'll create another child. This is going to be the underline. Going to add an image component. I'm going to, I can't use the horizontal layout group and put the underline here. So maybe what I'll do is I'll actually have these guys together. I'll have the item header container and the underline. I'll put them under a new parent. Call this one, the parent will be item header container, and this will be the text container. And so now this underline, we can align this to the bottom of the header container. We don't need this to be a height of 50, probably more like a height of 2. And it should go all the way across. Oh, I see. My header container needs to get, let's see, it needs to be slightly adjusted here. We're going to have it go all the way across and from the top, right? And the, let's see, height, that's too much height. I think we need to bring this down a bit. Let's see. Okay. Just making some adjustments here. There we go. Need to update my rect transforms when I did the reparenting. So now we bring the item header container down. 64. That seems okay. The height on it is 32. The text container is expanding up to take up the whole thing. We've got a horizontal layout group with some spacing, and the underline, this just needs a different color. And now we have our header for all of the line items in our cart. And the cart area, we can, let's see, we are already moving this off the sides, but if we wanted to move the item header, give it a little bit of padding on the sides, we certainly could. If we didn't, we don't have that underline doesn't go all the way across exactly, right? So we could say, we can move this in by like 16 pixels on the left and 16 on the right. And now we've got something that looks pretty good. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we actually, given that we've got this and it's sizing these things in a particular way, we'll probably want to use a horizontal layout group component again, potentially on these to make sure that as we add them, that we don't want these values, these text fields, we don't want these text fields to be out of alignment left and right from the header. So we'll probably use another horizontal layout component on the CartItemView prefabs, which is what we'll make next. So we've got our item header, and now we need to start adding some items. Again, we already know like this is gonna need to be a scroll container because as we add items, this is really gonna start to bump out. So let's go ahead and do that. We will create a new child. We're going to go up to our game objects, and actually, I guess I didn't need to create a new child because we're going to go straight from the game object. We're going to go game object UI scroll view. Okay, so now our scroll view, we're going to we'll start off by just telling it to fill up everything. Oh, and okay, it needs to be in the cart area. So we'll reparent that and tell it again to expand to everything. All right, so now it's filling up the entire cart area. And we want this to be, let's see, a certain amount off the top, right? We know that our item header container is 64 off the top and has a height of 32. So that means that our scroll view off the top should be 96, and that'll bring us right to the top of the underline there. And if we want to give another little bit of padding, right? Well, actually, yeah, no, I think that looks a little better when it goes right to the top. So we'll go to 96. And let's see, off of the bottom, we're going to need to bring this off the bottom as well because we need our total and our checkout. So we'll bring this off the bottom by maybe 128 pixels. And that looks like it's probably a decent amount of space. A little hard to see as well. We're going to go ahead and maybe change the, well, I don't know, maybe we want to change the background color so we can see this viewport a little more. But let's see, the scroll bar, horizontal and vertical. So we don't need scroll bars in this case. These are optional. We certainly don't need the horizontal scroll bar. We're going to make sure everything fits. And the vertical scroll bar, that's kind of the scroll container can function, perfectly well without the scroll bar as a visible UI element. We can just delete them out and everything will work just fine. Potentially from a UX perspective, having the vertical scroll bar there, when the content expands beyond the view, if the user sees the scroll bar, then they know that there should be more items further down in the cart. So potentially you do want to leave the vertical scroll bar there from a UX perspective, but for the time being, we're just gonna turn them both off because we don't really need them yet. So the scroll view components, the way that this works is you have a viewport with an image and a mask. So this defines, the viewport area defines where the content is allowed to show, and the content, this holds all of the children and will be the size, the content should expand to allow all of the children to lay themselves out, with the proper amount of spacing and everything. So for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell this to expand and take up the whole area. And as we add items, we probably are going to add a content fitter component, which can be used to size a parent element based off of the children, the size of the child elements. The parent element will kind of make itself as small as it can be without crunching anything together. So we'll see how this works as we kind of start to add some items into our content. So now we're on to actually adding the CartItemView and turning that into a prefab. So we're going to add a new child game object. This is going to be our cart item. We're going to expand this across. We're going to actually, let's see, we don't want to fully expand this because we need to define a specific height for this as well. And since we're not going to be using a grid layout component, we're only going to use a vertical layout component, which doesn't define the sizes of the children. We're going to define this manually ourselves. So what we'll do is we'll say that we're going to pin this to the top and we're going to give it a height of 100. We'll start with that. And then inside of our cart item, we're going to have a background. We'll ask it to expand, to take up the whole thing, add an image component, make it, for the time being, we'll make it red so that we can see it once it's available. Let's see, the left and right on the 0, left and right. Let's see, I'm having a little bit of a hard time seeing my scroll view here. The viewport, oh, the viewport's height is 0. It's not expanding to the size of the scroll view. There we go. Okay. So now my viewport and my scroll view, these are taking up the same amount of space. The content also. And here, let's go ahead and just really quickly, in order to show how this works, I'm going to add the vertical layout group. I'm going to control the child width so it will expand all the way across. Not going to control the child height. So we're still able to set an explicit height for the size of these cart items. And 100's a little bit big, right? We probably want to go a little smaller, maybe 64. That seems a little bit more, a little bit closer to what we've got in our UI mockup here. And so as I add new cart items, you can see the first one I add, right? It's trying to distribute them across the entire visible area. And that's not really what we want. We want them to not force expand the height, but bring them up to the top and then just give it a little bit of spacing so that we're able to see those separate items. So now when I add new items, they're going to continue to add. And you can see, there we go. The mask is already doing its job. I have items that are expanding beyond the size of our scroll view, and they are being hidden. The content is being hidden by that mask. Now, the content, this needs to be bigger than the size of the viewport in order for it to move up and down past the edges of the viewport here. If we go ahead and jump in right now, by default, this already comes with some interactivity on it. The scroll view component just built in from Unity. When I drag it, you can see it already allows me to drag horizontal, vertically. It's very free floating in this field. But what you'll notice is, and I'm going to go ahead and real quickly, I'm just going to change the color on this top one so that you can see it. It's always snapping that top one. Even when I scroll it back, even when I scroll it all the way up, it's always snapping us back to here. And that's because the size of our content is the exact same size as the viewport. But really, our content needs to match the size of all of our cart items. So what we're going to do is on our content, we're going to exit play mode so that we are able to save these changes. So what I'm going to do, let me see, I guess these scroll bars I might have also turned off while I was in play mode, or I think maybe because I didn't delete them, maybe these are being driven by the viewport right now. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and delete them so that it doesn't continue to turn them on and off. So the scroll view, I'm going to do a couple things. For one, I'm going to turn off the horizontal value. I'm going to say that it's only allowed to move vertically. Movement of type elastic, that's okay. That means that you're able to pull it beyond the edge, and then when you let go, it will snap it back so that it fits within the viewport. And the rest of this should be okay. So now the content, this one, if we add a content size fitter, and then the vertical fit is the preferred size. You can see here now it has updated the size of the content. The rect transform here is now showing my height delta. That was, and you can see the corners of it here are larger than they used to be. I'm going to also set the pivot point to 1. So the pivot is at the top of this content container. And I'm going to set my Y position to 0 so that it is starting out, rather than starting it out centered in the view here, it's starting it out with the top of the content at the top of the viewport. And now when I play, I should be able to, and let me just real quick change this background color again so that we can see it. I changed the second item. That's okay. Doesn't really make a difference. There we go. So now when I drag it up, you can see it's still the elasticity setting. That's what allows me to pull this past the point of the bottom of the content. But when I let go, it snaps back. And I'm actually able to scroll to see the lower items. And when I let go, it snapped it to the bottom rather than snapping it back to that top item. So this is looking good. We have a container that's allowing us to properly lay out our items as we add them. And so now we can go ahead, we're gonna get rid of all those extra cart items, and we're gonna come in here and affect this, create this prefab for displaying the different items. We're gonna start out by changing the background color on our item here. And I'm gonna set the cart area background to be a gray, so we're able to see this a little better. Okay, so we've got our cart item, and I think what I can actually do, hopefully, is since we already laid out, we have a horizontal layout group with our item, quantity, and price text fields. These are the same text fields that we're going to need inside of the prefab. So I'm going to try to just take this whole text container, copy it, and I'm going to paste it inside of my cart item here. Let's see, bring that in here, cart item. And if I ask this to expand out, there we go. So we've got the item, quantity, and price. I'm also going to bring in, give ourselves a little padding. So on the scroll view here, I'm going to give myself 16 pixels of padding on the left and the right to match my item header container. And this is looking pretty good. Let's see, we probably want to center these ones in the container vertically like so. And let's see what happens if this is getting a little bit tight on the sizing. So we may need to not auto size it. We'll leave that for right now. We'll see what happens when we start to bring in, the actual item names. We may need to make some adjustments on the sizing. But I believe for right now, that should be enough to get us started, these 3 text fields. So now we need to create the script to populate these text fields from the data when it's coming in. And in this case, I think we can probably pick up, to a certain extent, we can pick up some of the same functionality that we already made for our store item prefab, right? We had these text fields, these same name, price, and quantity text fields sort of being populated from that script. So we're going to jump over to our scripts, and we're going to start out with our store item view. We're going to make a copy of this script. We're going to save as, and I'm going to call this CartItemView instead. And let's see, we definitely don't need the change relative quantity method because we're not going to change any quantities from the cart itself. And populating the item data, we're not going to take in the store item data. I think what we're going to have is the cart itself is going to manage the requests to update quantities. It's going to store those quantities. The store has sort of all of the information around the different items in those, from our store item data scriptable objects. So this is really just a view. And to keep this as just a strictly populating this view from data, we're going to, set the values on these text fields. Let's see, we definitely don't have an image on our store item view. It does not need to know or keep track of its current quantity. That's going to be the responsibility of the cart as a whole. And I don't think we're going to need a start method either. So let's see, public void populate item. We're not going to take in store item data. Instead, we're just going to take in the names, the actual text, the string values that we want to put into these text fields. Okay, so we will remove the image population. And let's see, what kind of an error am I getting right now? Global namespace already contains a definition for store item view. I forgot to update the class name. So CartItemView, this is the CartItemView class. And the in order to update these, we need the item name as a string. We need the item price, and this again, this is going to be the total price for the current quantity count of the item. So this will be a float, and we'll call this total price. And actually, we also need the quantity, and we're going to put that in the middle. I'm going to say we've got an int for the quantity. And so now the item name text, we're going to set that to be, oh, and actually we're going to have some overlap here. You know, we call these text fields item name, item price, and item quantity. And here we have item name again. So I'm just going to switch this one to be name. And that should be good enough to get us away from our conflict. The item price, this is going to be the total price. And again, coming in as a float, we'll have to do a little bit of conversion to get that into the proper format. And the item quantity is going to be that quantity to string. Okay, so that should be enough that we can now add that component, that MonoBehaviour, onto our cart item, CartItemView. This is going to, we'll turn this into prefab momentarily. We will do the linkages. So the item name is linked to the item name text field. There's our quantity, and there's our price. Okay, all linked up. And so now in our prefabs folder, we're going to drag this cart item into the prefabs folder to create that prefab. Alrighty, I think that looks pretty good. And so now the next thing is going to be wiring up the cart to keep track of the current items that are being, you know, when the user clicks on the plus button to add an item to the cart needs to be listening for the, you know, needs to have some kind of a way to listen for these changes to the item quantities, and then as a result to either instantiate a new game object, you know, a new cart view item, or to remove one. If we're going from a quantity of 1 to a quantity of 0, we'll need to remove the cart item. Or if we're going from a quantity of 1 to more than 1, then we need to update the quantity and price on that item. So at this point, we're going to need to have some cart functionality. So what I'll do is I will create a new game object again. This will be on the cart. Actually, you know what? Yeah, okay. We'll keep it separate from now. Again, trying to keep our functionality and our views a little bit separated. So we are just going to have a cart object, and we're going to create a cart script for it. So we're going to make a new script, public class cart, and this is going to also again be a MonoBehaviour, and it will need to use the Unity engine. Okay, and this was going to get saved in our scripts folder as our cart.cs. We come back over here, we should get that recompile, and now we can add the cart to that object. I think that this is just Unity complaining about some UI stuff. Yeah, okay, that's all better. Okay, so now we have our cart, and if we look back at our, you know, sort of our plan here, the cart placed on the cart view game object listens for requests to change the cart contents, and we were thinking that that request was going to come from a menu items static event function relative quantity update. Okay, so the menu item needs to report out in some way that there's been a request for you know, a new adding one more of those of that item to the cart. So if we go to our store item data. So again, this is where we can kind of, you know, a scriptable object, it can just hold data, but it also can hold functionality. And so what we may want to do here is we could use a public static, let's see, the CartItemView. Oh, no, sorry, not the CartItemView. We want the store item view, right? So when we get this request to change the quantity, and you know what, I'm gonna, so that we're not getting ourselves confused, again, we want a single source of truth for this quantity. I'm gonna get rid of that current quantity. And we're going to need to, goodness, I wish this would give me I should be getting an error now because I just removed the current quantity, and I'm still referencing it down here, but for some reason I'm having some trouble with VS Code recognizing that. So for now, we're going to go set this back to just a quantity of 0. And when we change the relative quantity, we need to send out a message that other classes can listen for. And I think what we'll do is we're going to save our store item data instance so that we're able to, you know, invoke a request from that store item data instance specifically, which again, because that's a scriptable object, it's available for everyone. You know, everybody in the scene is going to have an easy time referencing it. And so what we'll do here, we're going to store or save the store item data locally here. So we'll have a private store item data, data instance, and we will keep this with us when we receive it in our populate item method. And if you have, you know, when you have overlapping names like this, right, this can be a little bit of a problem because store item data equals store item data. What, you know, this references this variable name, this references this variable name, this one is not seen at all. So one thing that we can do here, one thing we could do would be to change this variable value, but you know, maybe we don't want to do that. What we can also use is the this keyword to say, you know, this is a contextual keyword, which in this case, it means the current instance. And so when we say the current instance, the store item data field on the current instance, it looks at this rather than the store item data, you know, argument that is local to the function, which is this one. All right, so let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and really quick. I'm just gonna close and reopen my VS Code so that I can try to get some code hinting going on here. Okay, so yeah, here we are. And now, again, this current quantity, now it's showing me the error I expected to get earlier. When we change the relative quantity, let's see, we're not going to change anything locally. We are going to be invoking a global, you know, invoking this message, this action that the cart is going to be able to listen to. So I'm going to remove those lines for now, and I'm going to jump over to our store item data. So from here, we're going to say there's a public static func that is going to, let's see, menu item int. Okay. By menu item, that's a store item. So the store item data, again, that's an instance of a scriptable object. These represent the actual items. You know, we're not going to have, we'll only have that one instance of whichever item it is that we need in our store. So this is a good place to kind of use this. We're going to have the int that's going in, and you can see here, you're able to, with a func, you're able to define any number of inputs, and then whatever you put as the last argument or the last, whatever you pass in the last spot to these, you know, these are generics. Whatever you're passing in last is the return type that you can get back out of the func when it executes. So we will have a func that's going to pass store item data. It's going to pass a int for the desired change to the quantity, and it's going to receive back an int with the updated quantity. And this is going to be a relative quantity change request. You can go ahead and say that. And so now, when we invoke this from our store item view, we can say store item data dot let's see, we should see the relative quantity change request, right? Dot invoke, and the first argument is the store item data, which we have saved here. So that's a reference to the store item data instance. The quantity change request is the amount that's passed in. And what we're supposed to get back out of it, again, that third value in the func, this is going to be the returned quantity from the cart after it handles this request to add or subtract. So the int new quantity, or we can even say, you know, updated quantity, is going to be the return value. And so from here, we're going to say that the item quantity dot text is equal to the updated quantity as a string. Okay, so the change relative quantity invokes the relative quantity change request, right? So now that's invoking this function, which is going to, because it's a public static property, this will be accessible to our cart. So when the cart wakes up, or again in the start method if we prefer, we're going to start listening to relative quantity change requests. And I believe the way we do this is, oh, we need to get the class, right? So this is a store item data dot relative quantity change request. And then we'll call this a relative quantity change request handler. So now here we have a private void. Actually, this thing, oh, can't be void, because again, we're responding to that relative quantity change request, and you can see there's the signature. It wants us to have a function that's going to take in a store item data and an int and return an int. So private int, that's my return value. The method name is relative quantity change request handler. We're going to take in the store item data as the store item data, and we're going to take in the int as the change amount. Change relative yeah, we just say amount. That should be fine. Okay, so again, right now we're seeing an error because we're not returning a value. So the cart is going to keep track of its current contents, And I believe what we said is that the cart is going to do this. Cart has a menu item relative content update, menu item is amount listener assigned to the relative quantity update. And it validates the request to increase the quantity, decrease the quantity, and it holds the items and counts in a dictionary, right? So it doesn't actually need to know anything about the total store contents. It only needs to know about the things that it's being asked to add and subtract from its cart. So what we're going to do here, we're going to have a dictionary that holds a store item data on one side. And again, the store item data, this is, we're only ever going to have one instance of the scriptable object that represents a particular shirt or a particular item in the store as of right now. So we're able to use that particular instance as the key in our dictionary. So the store item data on one side and the int for the quantity as the value, right? So our key and our value. And this is going to be our cart contents. And when we receive a quantity change request, we're going to say if the cart contents dot contains key store item data, that means that we already have, or actually rather, if it doesn't contain it, we need to add it. We need to make sure that we have this available to update the quantity. So if it doesn't contain the key, then cart contents add a key, which is the store item data, and a value, which is going to start at 0. This is the first time that we're seeing a request for this store item, and so we're going to set the value to 0. Then, now that we know that we have a value in our dictionary, we can say that cart contents with the store item data as the key is going to plus equal the amount. And again, we're still not doing any logic to make sure that these are valid amounts yet, but at the very least, we are saving that amount against, as the value against the key, which is the store item data, and we can return whatever that new value is. Okay. So now we are returning it to that func, which was invoked by the the store item view, which is now setting the quantity to the new quantity. We are not yet doing anything to create the prefab to show it in the cart, but this should allow us to use our plus and minus buttons to affect the quantity in our store items again. So let's see. If we add here, we have something missing. The cart on line 14. Our cart on line 14, the cart content. We forgot to initialize our dictionary. So in our start method, we will create, instantiate the cart contents, the dictionary, so that at least the dictionary exists. All righty, run this again. And there you go. So now we are running this click on the plus and minus buttons is being run through the static function, static func relative quantity change request, which is being picked up by our cart class, who is listening for changes on that. Okay, so I think the next bit of this is going to be when we receive these value updates to create the prefab in our cart. So we'll stop here. I'm going to come back over to our cart. Again, very similarly to our store, we are going to need a reference to the prefab and a rect transform of where to put it. So our cart is going to need a game object. I'm going to serialize the field. Game object cart item prefab. And we're going to need a reference, a rect transform for the cart item container. When we receive this, if, let's see, we actually are going to have to do a little bit of work here. Okay, so I think actually what will make sense is we should add in a little bit of our logic to make sure that the quantities are valid before we go trying to instantiate prefabs when we have invalid quantities. So we know that our cart contents, store item data, this is the current quantity, and here we'll clarify some things. So we're going to say int current quantity equals cart contents store item data as the key. If the current quantity is 0, and actually, you know what? Let's see. If the current quantity is greater than 0, then that means we already have a prefab instantiated for this particular store item. Else, and actually, you know what? We're gonna let's see, current quantity. Else, I think we're also gonna do new quantity. Current quantity plus the amount. Okay, so if the current quantity is greater than 0 and the new quantity is less than or equal to 0, actually, no, we'll say equal to 0. And what we're going to do is we'll make sure that this new quantity here, right, we're going to make sure that it's not allowed to go under 0. So by saying the new quantity is whichever is larger, 0 or the current quantity plus the amount. So if we try to go negative here, we'll disallow it. It'll be reset to 0. And so now if the current quantity, however many we had, is greater than 0, and the new quantity is equal to 0, we need to remove the prefab, or the cart view clone for this store item. And if the current quantity is 0 and the new quantity is greater than 0, then we need to instantiate a prefab, instantiate a cart view clone for this store item. Else, update the quantity on the existing cart view clone for this store item. And we can simply say this is okay, the new quantity. All right. So what we need to also do, so in addition to, storing the store item data with its quantity, we need to know which prefab is associated with a particular store item data as well. So what we will do here is to create a second dictionary that is storing our store item data to a game object, which is the cart, we'll call these cart item view clones. Okay, that also is going to be need instantiation at the beginning, cart item view clones. Okay, and if we are removing the cart view for this store item, then the clones, we're going to remove the game object. Oh, sorry. We need to just not remove it from the dictionary. We need to remove it from the scene. So our cart item view clones get the game object associated with the store item data. And I think actually this gets passed to the destroy function. Okay. Instantiating one. Okay, so rather than destroying, we're going to add the store item data as a key with the game object as the value. So now we need to create that here, right? So we're going to say game object cart item view clone equals instantiate our prefab, which is our cart item prefab. We're instantiating it into the cart item container, right? And then we're going to save that game object in our dictionary against the store item view. And lastly, if we need to update the existing quantity, then what we know is we already have one of these. Prefabs created. It's already stored against the store item data key, and this is going to need to have an update. Updating the quantity. Oh, we need to get the component, right? The get component, the cart item view, and then we will populate that item with the new data. So the name is still going to be the name, right? The store item data item name hasn't changed. And let's see, we'll do a few things here. We're going to need to calculate the new price. We have the new quantity. So quantity is new quantity. And the total price we don't have yet. We're going to calculate that. Float total price is going to be equal to the store item data item price times the quantity, which is the new quantity. Okay. So we also need to, if we're updating, right? So destroying, we don't need to update because we're removing it. If we've instantiated a new one, we do need to populate it. So here, our cart item view clone, we need to, again, get component of cart item view, populate item. Just going to paste that in there. Populating the item, again, the store item data, we still want the item name. We still want the quantity, right? So the new quantity, and again, even though this should be, this new quantity should always be 1, but in the event that we're allowing people to add more than one at a time for some reason, we might as well recalculate the total price and pass that in. Okay. So we need to add in these linkages for our cart item prefab. We need to set the cart item container, our cart area. That is going to be the content of the scroll view is where we're going to be adding new cart item instances. Oh, and of course we need to remove that existing instance. I think we'll be fine to leave it. Again, we should see the same thing that we saw earlier where it sticks around. But we'll see. Okay, very exciting. Let's see what we get when we add a shirt. Hey, we got our new prefab. It's a shirt. It's $1 and it's $5. Let's go ahead and add another one. And now we've got a shirt. There's 2 of them, $10. Let's go ahead and remove it. We're back to 1 and 5. We're going to remove it again, go back down to 0. It deletes it. If I click 0 again, okay, we did get an error. We're trying to access it. Let's see. Let's see. The quantity was equal to 0. The new quantity, the new quantity was less than 0. That's why. So what we'll say here is if new quantity is less, that should never really happen though. It should never be, the new quantity should never be less than 0. I guess that's maybe a reason to not do this just yet. Let's see. If the current quantity is 0 and the amount is less than 0, I guess we should just return and not do anything. So if the current quantity is 0 and the amount is less than 0, then we'll simply return 0. That should be fine. Let's see. I guess alternatively, we could put another condition on here where we say if the current quantity, okay, else if current quantity, new quantity is greater than 0, then we're going to update. It's okay, I can remove that. We just need to add a little bit of a change to our condition here. And I think that should fix us. Again, so subtracting, I get nothing. Adding it, subtracting, good. Okay, great. So now we've got some of that. Oh, well, something managed to. Item with the same key has already been added. We'll have to come back to this at some point. It should not be adding a key multiple times. Oh, the cart view clones. That must be something must be happening with our prefab here. Cart 38. Okay, yeah. So, oh, right. I forgot to remove. I destroyed the prefab, but I forgot to remove it from our dictionary. So actually, before I so we're gonna destroy it there, and in the cart contents, I believe, the cart item view clones. We need to remove that value. So we're destroying it, and we're also removing it from the dictionary. Okay, one more time. Alrighty. Okay, and good. Everything seems to be working as we'd expect. And we can still have our scroll view here. This is looking really good. We have a pretty functional UI as of right now. So let's see, we want to do a few things, right? We want to remove this cart item prefab from our cart. So the start, right? Same thing that we were doing with our store item view, or no, sorry, the store where we're setting the prefab to false. We'll do that in our cart. This is the cart item prefab game object set active false. Actually, we don't even need to do game object. That's already a game object. Okay. And I think mostly at this point, the last thing that we need to do is to calculate the totals and display them. Interesting. The cart item. Okay. Oh, I think I have my prefabs linked wrong. So the cart item, yes, see, I have it selected from the one in the project view, not the one in the scene view. Now that should be fixed. Okay, so yes, it removes it, hides it, and we're not setting it active. We reinstantiate. So we instantiate the new one right here, and we need to say that game object gets set to active. Okay. Oh, still doing them inactive. Why is that? Cart item view. Oh, set active false. My goodness. We need to just change that to true. Okay. Alrighty, there we go. All these little things at the end. When you start to get a little tired. All right. Now we are seeing everything as we expected. We can remove them and everything is looking good. All right, great. All right, so we're getting really close here. I think that the last thing that we need is that total and the checkout button. Again, the checkout button, we're not going to wire that up. It's not going to go anywhere. So let's see if we can just finish this out real quick. Underneath our scroll view in our cart area, we are going to need a new text field. This is going to be our total. And again, this one, we've got an underline here as well. We might want to include that. And the total, I think we'll just kind of split that one in half, left and right. Let's see. So the underline, that's easy enough. We can go to our scroll view and we see at the bottom of the scroll view, we're going to want a new child, which is going to expand all the way across. It's going to have a height of just a couple pixels. We'll throw an image on it and we'll make it black. There we go. Make it a little bigger. Okay. What's our top one? Our top one is 2. And okay, that's all right. That's not so bad. This is the underline again. We'll say 2. Okay. All right, so for the total, we'll do this the same way we'd been doing this as a total container. We need this to be sort of closer to the bottom. So what I'll do here is I'll anchor this one to the bottom of the view. I'll raise it up a bit. We'll say that the value, Y value, maybe let's move 64 pixels up. All right. And I'm going to remove the text components from here and add them as children. So we have the total label and then the total value. Each of these gets a Text Mesh Pro. The label just says total. And again, we'll change this to be black. And the value, change that also to be black. We will align the value to the right-hand side. And we're going to need a reference to fill in. This is going to be, I'll put a placeholder in here so we can see what that looks like, particularly once it's larger value. And let's see, maybe we'll bring these down on size a little bit just to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room here. There we go. That looks pretty good. And we can bold it, make it a little more important so that the user really sees it. Okay, so our cart, again, we are going to need a reference to that text field. Text Mesh Pro UGUI, and this is our total amount, or our total text, we'll say. And every time that we have a change in the relative quantity, what we'll do is we will have an update total function that we call. This function, the total text.text, is going to be equal to our total value, and the total value is going to be a float, which we calculate by running through all of the items currently in our cart contents. So for each key value pair, which is the store item data and the int key value pair in our cart contents. So for each of these pairs, the key value pair dot key, that is the store item data, dot item price. We're going to multiply the price by the quantity. The quantity is, again, the value that we're storing in the dictionary. Let's see. Key value pair. Oh, and not int. Oh, yeah, no, an int for the quantity. Yes. This should be value. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing that. This is going to be the total value plus equal the key value pair. Okay, yeah, so that fixed it because I said I didn't have my assignment operator there yet. And again, we're going to need to format this, but for the time being, we will go ahead and just ask it to output that total value as the float with the $sign. And we want to update that total after any change to our cart contents. So now I believe we should have a total that will update appropriately. I think we're going to need to assign that text field, I believe. Yep, our total text. This is the total value text field. And we can obviously leave that as zeros like the way it is at the beginning, or what we're doing, maybe we'll tell it in our start function. We're going to say we could actually even just from here update the total. We can call that at the start. It will run through. There will be nothing in here. The total value will be 0, and it will just kind of that way when we add that currency formatting, it would apply it to whatever is to that zeroed value, basically. Okay, so let's see. Let's give this a run. Let's see if we get a total that updates. Oh, so far so good. Hey, look at that. We have a total that is being calculated from these as we remove items. It's good. We can go all the way back down to 0. And we have what I would say is a pretty functional storefront UI. You know, I think at this point, this has been quite a lot of information. We've done a lot today. All of this was just kind of, again, everything that we've built here was built live. I hadn't pre-made any of this, so thank you for bearing with me as we hit a couple snags here and there. And I think this is where we will. There is one more thing that I absolutely need to show you, which is why it is preferable and why it's so good to use these scriptable objects in this way. And that is because if we need to make updates to the store, but we don't have somebody who knows how to program, all they have to do to make a new item is to come in here and create a new value, a new scriptable object. They can copy and paste the existing ones. They can fill out the data, and without ever touching the code, we're able to add new items to our store. So we can, if we want to add a hat, maybe, the hat can have, we'll say this is, I don't know how, hats are expensive, very, very pricey hats. And, we can have a red shirt, more so than just the regular shirt. Maybe that one's, a little more expensive for a red shirt. Why not? And somehow there's a slice of pizza. You can, or maybe even a whole pizza. Let's see. You can get a pizza, and it's only $1 for a slice of pizza. That's pretty cheap. And so now we can create these. We can go to our store. We can. Oh, where'd I go? Store. I missed. There we go. Okay. We're going to create some new values here. We can add these new store items. And again, if we don't add them, that's okay. There's no requirement for all of the items that we've created here. Maybe we ran out of something, Maybe this was a seasonal item and we don't have it anymore. So whichever items we put in here, they are, we'll say maybe the pizza is, there's no pizza today. We ran out. So now we still have our shirt, socks, hat, pants, and a red shirt. And we should see all 5 of those items here. Oh, now again, I didn't add in the scroll rect, for these. We can do that really quick. Shouldn't take more than a moment to go to the store item area and grid layout group. That's all good. We're going to be doing that inside of our content, which means that we need a store item area that is a UI scroll view. Oops. Bring that up to the top. Okay. We will copy that store item area component, put this on our store item scroll view. We will paste the rect transform component values here. We're going to get rid of those scroll bars again. The viewport looks good, size to the whole thing. Bring that up. The content, again, we're going to use that content size fitter. This is going to be unconstrained horizontally, vertical fit, preferred size. And then the store item area. So we need that grid layout group. This component, I'm going to copy the component. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and drag it in here. I'm going to drag this and replace the content. So get rid of that content, add this guy, content size fitter, preferred size, and the scroll item view lost a reference to its content. There we go. That's the store item area. Okay, I think this ought to do it. Yeah, there we go. And now the only thing, again, we're missing is that anchor point, the pivot point. If we set that up to 1 so that it stays at the top, that should give us what we were looking for. There we are. And now we're able to see all of these items and get to the red shirts and the pants, add them in, the hat, all of that. We have our scroll view here, so we're able to access them. And we have, again, at this point, oh yeah, very, very elasticy. A pretty great UI. So again, thank you so much for watching. If you have questions, comments, please drop them, and I'll do my best to respond. And catch you next time.